Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. My name is Josh Weesey, I'm your host, and I'm excited to bring you today's guest, Andy White. He's the brand manager for FXR MX and former race team and marketing manager at KTM North America. Now, that's just a couple of his experiences. He has been a race team manager. He's been a racer himself. He's owned a motorsports dealership. Like, tons of good stuff here. We're going to get a bunch of that packed into this episode. So get your notepad out. Be ready to pay attention to this because he's bringing some good stuff here. Now, before we get into the show with Andy, though, there's a few other things I want to tell you about. First is 4-Wheel Parts. I am excited that the 4-Wheel Parts powered race team, Scanlon Motorsports Group, is allowing me to run with them this year at Vegas to Reno. So this Thursday, August 15th, I am going to be hanging out with SolderWeld at their booth, doing a little bit of podcasting. I'll be walking around Tech and Contingency, getting some interviews. And after that, I'm going to be hopping in one of the pit crew trucks with Scanlon Motorsports Group, which is also SMG. And we're going to be running Vegas to Reno. Normally, I run the race with Jimmy Moore of Bold Racing. And if you haven't seen my social media posts already about it, I'll let you know. He got hurt and is no longer able to compete in the race, which is a bummer. I know Jimmy gets really excited about this race. But, you know, I was very fortunate that Craig Scanlon and his group are going to allow me to tag along and basically like, hey, get in the corner over there. Like, don't break anything. So that's going to be my goal, is to not break anything. Secondary goal is actually help them win the race. But either way, I'm excited that they allowed me to come along. That just kind of speaks to some of the cool people that work at 4-Wheel Parts, you know, and the support they provide that team. And then obviously in this case, the support they're providing me and allowing me to tag along. So I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate some of the products that they sell. So I was able to get my hands on a set of Icon alloys from Icon Vehicle Dynamics, the Rebound 17-inch wheels from 4-Wheel Parts recently, and I just got them installed a couple days ago, and gosh, they look so good. I'm pumped about it. But they've got deals running on those. They've got deals across the board right now, so head over to 4wheelparts.com, check them out. Let me know if you got questions, or for some reason you can't find a deal on something, let me know. But there's always some sort of cool deal just running. Honestly, August 10th, they had a huge deal. It was $100 off of every time you spend $1,000 with no limit. So that was pretty crazy. That was called the Endless Summer Sale. But you missed it if you're listening to this show right now, because that was August 10th, and I'm recording this intro on August 13th. But either way, there's a bunch of other sponsors that make this show possible, and I'm very appreciative of them. First off, AMSOIL. They provide amazing lubrication products, and they're a company that runs on freedom. You can find out more at amsoil.com/rider. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology, and they're ready to rescue your race. I will be with them this Thursday. They always run some demos at the Tech and Contingency for Vegas to Reno, so if you want to see how their product works, head over there and check it out. TopToPodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship and website creation. Bold Racing, they're a family desert UTV race team and longtime supporters of this show. Crash Act Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, including MBRP, HMK USA, Sudboy Traction, Diode Dynamics, and High Octane Coffee. And now it's time to get in the show. There's just a couple of more things I want to cover with you. First off, please head over to iTunes, leave that rating and review. iTunes recently changed their structure for their categories, and it's actually not been the best thing so far for the show from a transition standpoint. So honestly, we would really appreciate your support. Head over to iTunes, leave that rating and review, and hey, if it's a 5-star rating, like, high five. That would be phenomenal. But also subscribe. No matter what podcast player you use, go ahead and subscribe. That would be great. But now we're going to get into the High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up featuring Joe Sylvester, and then Andy White.
What's up, guys? Joe Sylvester here with your High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up of the day. Today I want to talk about sponsor attraction. Sponsor attraction, to me, is a much better tactic than quote-unquote sponsor hunting. You want to build your brand. You want to establish yourself in the racing community and in the marketing realm of things. And, you know, as a respected individual, as a professional, you don't want to just keep knocking on doors and hoping somebody answers. You want the sponsors to come to you. That is the most ideal situation for you to be in, and it's the most ideal situation for them. Believe it or not, companies do have, you know, people that work for them or even owners of companies. They take notice on social media. They see what's going on, and they see the brands. They see the people that stand out. Make yourself stand out from the rest. Be very active on social media. Be very active with your press releases. Try to grow your email database. And like I said, build your brand. Make your brand something that a company would be proud to be associated with. And like I said, when they come to you, it's a much better feeling than sitting there all night long sending out 100 emails. I know this from experience, trust me.
Today's guest on the show is Andy White. He's a brand manager for FXR MX and former race team and marketing manager at KTM North America. And I'm sure there's other stuff too, but those things seem really relevant for this show. But I want to know more about that. So Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into your background.
Right on. Okay. Well, like every kid, I rode mini bikes back in the day, and one day hopped on a real motocross bike and started enjoying the bike and hanging out with friends. And then I started racing when I was like 15, 16 years old. And before I knew it, I was a pro, traveling across the country, racing pro nationals and trying to make enough money to make things happen. And did that for many years. And while I was doing that, I got into suspension and understanding the bike a little bit more, and met up with a good friend of mine that understood suspension well, and we started our own suspension company in Canada, and we franchised it out to 5 locations plus one in New York State, and ran that for about 15 years. And then basically had an opportunity to buy a motorcycle dealership in Montreal and ran that for a couple of years. And then I received an email from KTM, a manager at KTM, asking me if I was interested in becoming the race director for the factory KTM team for Canada in 2004. And it was a great opportunity. So I jumped on it, sold my shares of my dealership and my suspension company, and took on the responsibility of running the factory team. And I was also the marketing guy at the same time. It was kind of double duty at that time. Budgets were small. And then later on, I was just the race team manager and whatnot. And part of the job was getting sponsors for the team. We had the bikes and the parts and a few major sponsors like FMF and Dunlop, but I had to go out and find money to support the team. That was part of my deal. KTM was chipping in a big chunk of it, but we went out and got Red Bull and Royal Distributing, Fox one time, Parts Unlimited another time, and a bunch of sponsors to make this whole program work. And it was great, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and we won lots of championships, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of good people and networked with tons and tons of people. And part of the deal also for Canada was the Orange Brigade program, where we were helping out the young kids and amateurs and beginners and whatnot at the races with their bikes and repairing them. And so I got to meet a lot of parents. And, the questions came up, how do we get sponsors? How do we get more equipment? How do we get more support from KTM and all that kind of stuff? And, I learned that a lot of people just really didn't know what they were doing and had no idea on how to get sponsorship. And I kind of knew from way back in the day when I was racing as a beginner and then intermediate and into pro, I had to go and get my own sponsors and sell myself to the sponsors. They get product and money to make the program work. So I've been in the full circle. I'm a racer at heart. I owned a dealership. I ran suspension, and then I ran a factory KTM program. And at the end of 2014, after winning one of my last championships, I decided that was it, and I wanted to try something else. I decided to open up my own consulting firm. And within a couple of weeks, I had 6 or 7 different companies knocking on the door wanting support and help. And one of them was FXR. And they're a really big snowmobile company out of Canada that dominates snowcross in the northern states and the snow belt. And they had built motocross gear here and there, and kind of just for fun to support their snowcross guys that were racing moto or riding moto. And the owner, Milt Reimer, talked to me about wanting to grow the whole FXR program. So we basically sat down and built a plan, and that was in 2015. And here we are in 2019, launching the 2020 today. So quite the journey.
That is awesome. And so today is August 12th, 2019, depending on when you're listening to this. That's important. So yeah, it is happening right now. And I've worked with a couple of brands and stuff, and I know that the launch cycle is pretty big deal. And it is challenging, and it is, I guess, it means even more that you're willing to take some time to chat with us right now with all the stuff going on. So again, I appreciate that. But well, I got a couple of follow-up things. First off, did you ever work with Scott Harden?
Actually, Scott Harden was at KTM in 2004 when I started.
Yeah.
He was working in the Ohio office with Rod Bush and Zolikov and a bunch of guys. I get to know him a little bit, and actually, funny story, he has 2 sons, and one of his sons was a pretty good supercross rider, and I brought him up to race a supercross in Canada to compete, and he did fairly well. He was okay. I think Scott might have had a little influence on that to bring him up into Canada, but yeah, I remember the Hardens very well.
Yeah, that's awesome. He was on the show recently. Super knowledgeable guy.
Oh yeah.
I just knew that he had experience at KTM, and now he's with Best in the Desert. And actually, I might run into him later this week because I'll be out at the Vegas to Reno race for Best in the Desert. So I might just stumble across Mr. Harden. But either way, I was like, you got to know him. I mean, the company's big enough where it's possible that you didn't run across him, but it's small enough where you might have that opportunity. So, well, that's cool. And then going back a little bit more, you start off on mini bikes, which is like, I just remember it made me think back to when I used to build mini bikes and ride them around. It's just so much fun. What kind of mini bike did you have? Was it one of those big wheel ones, or one like a Rutman, or I mean, what'd you have? Do you remember?
I believe it was a GT80.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. What? Yeah, GT80.
Was there another one that was a 70, like a GT70, or is that? Am I making that up? One of my neighbors had something like that. Yeah, I might be making that up. It sounds good though, right? You got a 70 and you got an 80. I'm trying to picture it right now. Is this bike that one of my neighbors had, and like I can see it clearly in my head, but I swear on the side it said something 2 letters 70, but shoot, that could be. It wasn't an XR 70 or anything like that, but I don't know. I'll have to message him later.
Wasn't it a Suzuki LT 70 or something
could have been
like that? A Suzuki something?
It felt like there's something in the name to his trail, like something Trail 70. I don't know. I'm gonna have to message this guy. He's probably gonna be like, no, it was it was the 80, something completely different. But I had me some little Indian, like the really mini bikes, and I had some choppers that I built that were a lot of fun. But
right on.
Well, that's cool. And then you mentioned like you met up with a suspension person, and first off, everybody's got to have a suspension guy or gal. Like you just got to have that. You got to have a good sponsorship program and a good suspension person. Like I think that you got to have that. If I've learned anything from the show, you need those things. But what I want to talk about here in just a minute is all these other things around what you said of trying to get sponsors for race programs, and as yourself as a rider. I want to get into some of the lessons learned. But right before that, I mean, what are you pumped up about right now? I mean, you've got this launch coming up, obviously, for 2020, but I mean, what else is on your mind that you're pumped about?
Wow. Well, Supercross is around the corner,
Yeah.
so lining riders up in teams on that, working on budgets, finishing off this season right now with some of our privateers and whatnot. Finished Loretta's. Just lots of stuff going on right now. And I'm also responsible for the Canadian racing, plus putting budgets together for Europe.
Okay.
So we've got a lot on the plate right now and lots of opportunities with a lot of riders and teams to work with. And it's kind of fitting in the program on who we can afford, what kind of budgets can we spend, and how much return are we going to get for our investment for the next year. That's the whole goal, is, to sell product and get the best bang for our buck, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And, something else that you mentioned a little bit ago is about, how FXR pretty much dominated the snowcross market. I'll tell you what, in the Midwest, too, they're very popular out on the trails, snowmobile trails. So I live in Michigan, and I do all my riding in, northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. And there are just, FXR is out there. They have made their presence known over the past, 10 years. You used to see a lot of factory stuff, right? You'd see Arctic Cat, you'd see Skidoo, you'd see Polaris. And not that those are gone, but now you see FXR and Climb, all over the Midwest. They've done a good job with that program, getting it out there. And they got some pretty cool-looking stuff, too.
They do. The OEMs are really good at building sleds, but they're not good at making product or gear to keep the riders warm. So they figured out, why are we wasting our time trying to outbuild companies like FXR?
Mm-hmm.
So, we come in and we sponsor the team. We'll throw some money on the table and get the athletes all set up with some really good looking product and product that really wears well and makes the athlete feel good, and it doesn't overheat, but he doesn't freeze, and some good protection at the same time. And with all the bright colors and their sponsors, I feel we do a fantastic job of representing the team and the athlete. And I think it works. It obviously works because people are going online to buy our product and going to dealers coast to coast to buy our product, and sales are solid. Sales are growing.
Perfect.
No complaints. No complaints there at all.
Perfect. Who are some of the bigger racers that you work with in the MX program?
Who are some of the riders I've worked with?
Yeah.
Guys like Mike Brown, Colton Fasciati, Dusty Klatt, Michael Willard, European guys like Cornell Nemeth that have come over from Europe to race the Canadian stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mason Phillips from Australia.
Nice.
I mean, it must be 50, 60 riders that I've worked with in the last couple of years. And then what about John Dowd, Mike Treadwell, Keith Johnson, some of those guys from England, Jimmy Dakotas, Kyle Peters, Kyle Cunningham, Henry Miller.
Henry, yeah. I know Henry too.
Yeah.
He's never been on the show, but it was something that we had talked about. But yeah, I actually know him a little bit. That's cool.
Yep. So some really good riders. Even Chris Kiefer, who's a test rider now in the industry. He rode for me on KTM's, and he does a lot of testing for us at FXR and gives us a lot of feedback right now. So we've got a great bunch of people that we support.
Awesome. I'm surprised you got that many names out. That was a lot.
I'm surprised too. I was kind of thinking, okay, put on the spot, and then they just all rattled out.
I was like, if you could get 3, I'd be impressed, but yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
That was good. I was trying to write them down. I was like, all right, my hand's done. I'm done. Well, it's cool. Well, hey, right now we're going to take a minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast, and we'll come right back into the main event. 2 questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you got to check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of TopToPodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to TopToPodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. Family race team. Those are the first words that come to mind when I think of Bold Racing. And the next one is actually axles. Bold Racing is a premier distributor of GSP XTV axles. And if that wasn't cool enough, they just came out with an entirely new axle called the Revolution axle. It is a hollow tube axle. It's really cool. If you head over to their website, gspxtv.com, or you can find out more at boldracingltd.com, you can find out how this new axle technology works. So they are saying to view this as a fuse for your drivetrain. So the hollow tube CV axle twist technology actually increases the strength and reliability of the axle, and it also reduces stress on the drivetrain. Plus, honestly, it's super cool looking, and if people know me, they know that I really like cool looking stuff. So they come in this really cool gold color. Check it out. It's absolutely revolutionary. Let's talk about the engine in your racing vehicle for a second. A failed rod or main bearing can end a race as quickly as a wreck, and that's why it's critical to use the best lubricants, AMSOIL synthetic lubricants. If you know anything about racing and competition, you know AMSOIL. That's because AMSOIL synthetic lubricants have earned the trust of racers everywhere. AMSOIL synthetic lubricants deliver exceptional protection against wear. They fight extreme heat in the toughest conditions, and they reduce friction, helping maximize power. On asphalt, dirt, water, snow, whatever, AMSOIL synthetic lubricants are the premium choice for your race vehicle. Upgrade to AMSOIL today to grab a competitive edge on the track. Go to AMSOIL.com/rider for details.
Hey guys, George Hamill here to talk about SolderWeld's new off-road repair kit. If you're a racer of any type or an off-road enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to take a close look at this product that bonds metal on the spot. SolderWeld has combined some of their most elite products into one small kit that fits perfectly under your seat or strapped to a roll cage and allows you to make some insane fixes anywhere you go. How many of us have been in a race or out on the trail and got a rock chip in a radiator or brake line? We have seen a top-tier desert race team at the 2019 Mid 400 taken out by a simple rock to the radiator. If they had an off-road repair kit on board, they could have been back up and running in just minutes. The kit includes everything you need to work on dirty aluminum, stainless steel, copper, and many other metals. SolderWeld's cutting-edge technology allows you to make these fixes with extremely low heat and incredibly high tensile strength, leaving you a lasting fix every time. Don't be that guy broke down on the side of the trail. Get your off-road repair kit today, and your friends will thank you.
All right, well, welcome back, everybody. Now we're in the main event. That's where we talk about the sponsorship tactics and strategies. So first part, we kind of got to know you, Andy. A little bit about your background, some of the cool things that you've done. But now we want to steal all that knowledge and use it to our advantage here. So let's talk a little bit more about brand ambassadors. We mentioned earlier you've been on all sides of this thing. But I mean, honestly, what are like the characteristics that make a great brand ambassador? I mean, what are the things that you look for, and what are the people listening here, like, what should they be paying attention to?
Well, a brand ambassador is usually a person that has been around the industry for quite a while, that has a really good reputation, represents products well, is being loyal. He's a kind of a go-to person for people. Probably still rides at a decent level, a good spokesperson, and knowledgeable. And they're hard to come by, these people that are in the industry. And when you do find them, you connect to them, and they do really well for you. They will really represent the brand well, and other people to the product. And it's kind of like when you go to a local motocross track, your weekend track, and then you've got your vet guy or someone there that everybody knows, and you go to hang out and talk to him and high five him or whatnot, and he's the kind of guy that we're looking for, guy or girl. So that's kind of like the brand ambassador that I'm looking for.
No, it makes sense. I talked about on the show before, people's plan B, right? Like, what do you do when you're done racing? And that's definitely a path that a number of people have taken, right? They finish racing, they create some other element of adding value in the motorsports industry, and then they turn into brand ambassadors. And some people keep their same, race sponsors throughout that transition, which I think is pretty awesome. So, well, what about, like, same question here, but now just your sponsored racers, like active racers? What are the characteristics that you look for with that program?
Good question. Today with social media, we're looking for riders that obviously have a good following, and that they're posting good stuff and people want to see their product. And riders that other kids are looking up to is important. And also, if they're, put in some good results, they got a clean image, they speak well, people talk about them. It's a mixture of everything that we kind of look for the best of the best. Sometimes having an ultra fast kid, but doesn't have a good attitude or is not good on social media, is not really the best person to invest your money into, because he's not really speaking well about the product, or he's not even talking about the product. So, you're looking for someone that is kind of like a young brand ambassador that is going to help promote the product down the road or presently. And we'll post stuff on social media about stuff and speak well about it and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're looking for. It's not rocket science. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, it sounds good. And I've done 175 episodes on it. And people still can't figure it out. Neither can I. No, it's something that's really interesting too, because I've interviewed folks who have been around the industry for a while too, and they've just talked about how it's changed, right? How, especially with social media becoming such a big focus, it's just shifted perception. It's shifted what brands are looking for. So, I mean, you've been around, and you've been on different sides of this. What do you think has changed? I mean, over the years, if you look at, let's say, if we were trying to get a sponsorship in the 90s versus now, I mean, what's changed?
Well, in the 90s, there was no internet. It was basically magazines. You couldn't post a picture anywhere except in a magazine or like Cycle News or something like that.
Right.
So, at the local races, if you were a top guy, you'd be promoting them with logos on your bike, and you'd be putting logos on your trailer, and you'd look professional, and only local people would really know you. You couldn't really get the word out, so you'd have to go to the big races, the big amateur races or big pro races, to get noticed by the people that had the money to spend. So you kind of had to go to the big rounds to meet the people and network with them, and you had to kind of sell yourself back in the day a lot more than you have to do today. You had to meet the people, meet and greet, and be polite. And actually, you had to use that thing called the telephone and make some phone calls, and sell yourself on the phone. And today, I feel that a lot of young people don't know how to use the phone, and they're shy to use the phone. So they'll text you, email you, and try and get your attention that way, which is fine. But you really don't know the person until you talk to them on the phone or you talk to them face to face. So, social media can all be fake as well. People can buy likes and whatnot. And, you have to kind of look into the program, into their social media to see if it's really true or not. And, another way that I figure out if riders are the riders to support, I look at some of their other sponsors, and most brand managers know other brand managers from other companies. Like I know the FMF guys, I know the Dunlop guys, and the Pro Tapers and the filters and whatnot. So we can call each other and go, hey, do you know this guy so-and-so? Is he the real deal? Am I wasting my time, or what is it? They'll give you the honest opinion. So we do talk, and we do know who to support and who not to support. So it's not very complicated.
No, that's good. I would love to go back in time now. Like, I mean, for one, this show would be pretty much worthless back then, right? It would be a complete waste of time. People like, you just win, right? And then, shake hands, kiss babies. But I think that nowadays it's opened up the market to, one, a lot more competition. That you don't necessarily have to be the top person in the top series to attract and retain sponsors. And it's also opened it up to people who aren't necessarily just pure racers. There's people who are just, maybe they're the weekend warrior that has really good social media, and they gain attention. But then at that same point, it's made that space a little bit crowded. But then also the market is expanded. A lot more companies are paying attention to motorsports, whether it's just pure, influencer-based marketing on, Instagram, or going in the race programs. Like, I feel like both of them has expanded, but it is still a pretty crowded space. Social media is crowded too right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's a lot of riders on social media posting, and we get a ton of resumes every day. And when we look at the kids' results on the resume, and then we look at their Instagram and Facebook, you can really tell a lot by looking at the rider, the style, the setup, what his gear looks like, what the bike looks like, what the pit area looks like, what kind of results, where he's racing. Pictures spell out a million words right there, and it's easy to kind of figure out what kind of levels he's at. And then you can research through the AMA or whatever to find out if those results are true or not. So if you BS on your resume, you'll be called out in a second.
That's awesome to know that, though, for sure. Like, I'm sure people listening, they might think, I can just kind of, what is it? Scrub the numbers, or what do finance people? Cook the books. Just a little bit of cooking the books,
Yeah.
Because I know people try that in, like, actual resumes. I'm a hiring manager at my day job, right? And that's why we do background checks, right? So basically, what Andy just told you, everybody, is he does background checks. So if you only won 5 races and you put 6 down, he's gonna call you out on it. You know, a little bit of dishonesty.
Maybe I won't go that deep, but I have.
Hey, no, don't tell him that. You want to make sure. Yeah, don't let him in on your secret.
I've got people that work for me that will do the research and give me some feedback. And, I think the honest truth is the best. If you're a C rider and you say, hey, I'm looking for support. I'm 2 years into it and I'm gaining a lot of momentum. I feel great on the bike and I'm hoping to be a B and an A down the road. I feel I can represent your company well. What kind of opportunities can you give me as a support moving forward? And that basically is right there, black and white, very easy to figure out what kind of support to offer them. And, same with D riders and A riders. It's the riders that oversell themselves, where it's a massive paragraph and a huge story that you've got to read. And it's just all about me, 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 me. I'm not really reading it and focusing on after the 7th me and I. It's a bit of a sales story, and I'm not really interested in the program because I know whatever I offer is not going to be good enough. So I kind of, might not even reply, or I might just say, you know what, we'll pass, or I'll pass it on to one of the assistants and see where we can go from there. But every rider has their own story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing I want to talk about a little bit more with you is budgeting, and you've had responsibility for budgets, for race teams and for FXR. Probably from a marketing standpoint, you said you're working on some budgets right now, and and obviously being a racer too, you have responsibility for your own budget about making sure you can actually pay the entry fees and get the gear you need and get all the support you need. So I mean, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years regarding budget management for the businesses and the race teams?
Well, at all different levels. When I started racing, you loved it so much that you want to go racing all the time, and you'll go racing on used tires and used chain and sprockets, whatever, because you can't afford it, but you just want to go out and race. So there's different levels of budgeting. If you're a family that's gonna tackle, say, the nationals for the first time, and you've never gone and done the nationals, you got to budget right, because you're going to run out of money real quick. And if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. You don't go to a race and not know what gearing or what kind of tires, or you don't have proper tear-offs and roll-offs. You don't have spare gear. You got to have the right equipment to go racing. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. If you don't have everything you need, then you might as well just stay at home and just ride, local races. That's the way I see it. And I see a lot of riders today try and race the big races with a program that is kind of half built and half set. Their race bike is nowhere close to their practice bike. Their practice bike is pretty worn out. Their race bike is pretty mint, and they have no time on it. And they tell me that, they save the race bike for weekends to race. And I said, is your race bike identical to your practice bike? They're like, no. The practice bike is bone stock. My race bike is fully set up with cams, piston, exhaust, race gas, whatnot. And I'm like, well, how do you ride that bike fast when you practice on that bike all the time? And they look at you like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're trying to ride the practice bike as hard as you can, and then you hop on the race bike, which is a totally different bike to your race bike. So how do you expect to go? You're going to go faster on the practice bike than the race bike, because you're more comfortable on a practice bike.
Right.
So you should just go out and buy two stock bikes and just run them stock with some exhaust systems on it and some bars or whatever you want and suspension, and don't bother pimping it out, because you need the two bikes to be identical. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. And I tell people, when you're going to budget, make sure you budget two bikes and equipment to keep those bikes exactly the same, and then buy some spares, and then sit down and figure out, okay, what's it going to cost to do, I don't know, 5 rounds of the Nationals? You know, what kind of fuel economy your vehicle gets. You need hotels, you need restaurant food, race gas, entries, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, map it out on a spreadsheet, and it'll probably shock you at the end of the exercise on how much money you really need to go racing. You might not even leave the house.
Yeah. You know, I've got a template, if for anybody listening, for a little budget template that I could send you. I'd have to dig it back up. It's been a couple months, and by months I mean it may have been a year since I last sent this out to anybody. But if you're listening right now and you want just a little template to play with to get started with, just shoot me a message, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com, or direct message on any of the social media, and I can get that to you. But that's huge, and it's kind of discouraging. I mean, even if you capture just your normal expenses, like I did this once. I mean, this has been a while back, but one of my first jobs out of college, I first started, and I'm like, they had lunch hours. Like, you get lunches here? Like, wow, that's cool. Like, I used to work with my dad, and I was like, you don't eat lunch with Dad. Like, you just work. And either way, they were like, you should go see this thing called Qdoba. It's this really cool restaurant. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And I tried it, and I had Qdoba like every single day for 5 days in a row. I was like, how much would this cost me if I did this forever, or like for the next year? And I added it up, and I was like, yep, I'm brown bagging it from now on. Like, this is crazy. But once you start adding up all those little things, especially like you're saying, the hotel and the gas to the hotel, and, you know, race fees and like all these different things, it's important. And if you're building a sponsorship proposal for somebody, so let's say you're trying to pull on a title sponsor, or you're ready to start asking for, maybe it's cash, you're going to need to understand those real expenses before you put that proposal together. And if they ask and you don't have that answer, then you may have missed out on an opportunity there.
Yep. I think some of the funniest resumes I've ever seen that I've received in the years is when a rider will itemize what he's got to spend. He'll put like 3 air filters, $22.95 each.
Yeah.
3 spark plugs, $6.95 each.
Yeah.
You know, and just itemize his whole budget and tell me how much money it's going to cost him to go racing, right down to the penny. I think, okay, you put a lot of effort into that, but I don't really need to see how much a spark plug and a filter are. But good on you for building all that. Yeah. You know, so it's but, you know, working on budgets at all different levels, working on the factory racing budget, that's a very complex program, because you're working on, you know, if you have a 10-round series, you've got to work on 10 rounds of traveling from your race shop to that location, for travel for all the riders, mechanics, the fuel in the vehicle, the hotels. And then basically parts for the weekend, sign up, and then, you know, you got to budget bonuses and salaries and all that in there too. And prior to all that, you've got to build a budget on testing and development and on the bikes prior to the event, and practice bikes and practice parts and travel. And you got to build the whole 12-month calendar on your budget, and try and figure out if you can bring in enough money to support your budget, and then how many riders you can have on the program. And it's really hard to tell how many bikes you're going to break or how many engines are going to blow up during the season, but you've got to kind of budget for that, because if you'll blow your budget, who's going to be spending the money after that? Where's that money going to come from? Mm-hmm. If you don't have that money, it's you know, if you're working for KTM, when they give you a budget, that's the budget. If you blow the budget by October and you still got some races to go, I think you'll be looking for a new job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's so yeah. There's a lot of different ways to and different levels of budgets. Like I said, from the privateer to the family to the factory race team, I've worked on them all, and it's pretty complex. It's not easy.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and especially if, you know, people are listening right now and they're thinking about reaching out to a company. I always say this, that there's some human being behind that proposal that has to make these decisions, and that, they're going through in their head some of the things that you just talked about, like, all right, how do all of these things fit into, my existing budget, my existing, rider profiles, like, how do I balance all these things? And that's why people get so frustrated when, a rider or race will reach out and be like, sponsor me, bro. Like, oh, okay. I got enough going on right now. Like, I don't have to deal with that that type of approach. But yeah, that's another thing I try to reiterate when I bring a guest on the show who, sit on the sponsorship decision-making side of things. And it's just like, there's a human element and there's a lot going on. So, you need to be prepared, and which we've talked about some of those ways to be prepared. But at the same point, just, I think it's good to understand all of the levels of complexity that they're going through, because you're going to have to make a decision based off of a limited amount of information, with a bunch of variables in play, and to hope that it's the right one. So, good. Well, what other lessons learned have you kind of picked up over the years that you'd like to share with folks? I mean, what are some of the other important topics that the listeners should hear?
I guess if you're looking for sponsors, and you're looking for support from whoever, pretend you're on the other side of the fence and you're receiving that proposal resume. Is it how, you want to present it in a way that it's going to be the wow factor, and that the person's going to want to look at that resume and that proposal and dig deep into it, and hopefully read what that, company's looking for, representation, connecting to a dealer, maybe being a spokesperson, maybe being the guy at the track that's in charge of banners, something like that is really going to help you brand your product and help you sell more product down the road. I always tell riders, don't oversell it. Put the real meat and potatoes into it. Put some good pictures. Don't make it too long. Be polite when you're writing the email or whatnot, or presenting it. I think when you can walk up to someone and present them with the resume right to their hands, I think it's really good, because that goes a long way. I remember a rider many years ago. I was at a restaurant having breakfast at a Supercross, and I noticed that this family kept on looking over at our table, and I kind of figured out why, because we had some decent riders on the table, and I guess they noticed them. And as we were leaving, this young rider of about, 14, 15 walked up to me and said, Mr. White, my name is Neil, and I'd like to give you my resume, and I'd like to have a look at it, and I'd like to represent your company one day, and I'll wait to hear from you. And here's my resume. Nice meeting you. And I was like, wow. And his parents were off to the side, and he did it all on his own.
That's awesome.
He was shy, but he walked over and he did it. And I ended up calling him and telling him that we'd support him. And it was probably one of the best decisions we did. We got lots of mileage out of the rider, and it was a good program. It's a business. I'm working for a company. I'm working for a person that owns this company, and they hired me to do a job. It's not my company. So I've got to represent the company the best I can. So I'm looking for the best people possible to be the spokespeople for this product. So my boss is happy. So we sell more product, and hopefully I get bonuses and get paid more down the road to, pay my mortgage and pay my bills. So, it's kind of a chain link fence. Everybody works together and all the links. So, if everything works together, it's great. So, if, you're looking to get sponsored, you gotta, put in a solid effort. The bigger effort you put in, the more effort we'll look into your program. If it's a half-ass, not very well done resume, well, then you're probably not going to get sponsored. That's some of the best advice I can give you.
No, that's perfect. Well, with that said, we're actually going to start wrapping things up at the finish line here. Now, we went through a bunch of good stuff here. Lots of lessons learned, different characteristics that you look for in a brand ambassador and a sponsored racer. But if people listening forgot all of that and they just remembered one thing, like if they just took away one thing from this conversation, what would that one thing be?
What would that one thing be?
Yeah.
Be yourself and, try to be professional and represent yourself the best you can. And I don't know. I think that's really the best advice I can give you is don't oversell it. Don't be fake. Be true. And it's all about having fun at the same time. The sport of racing is fun. Only a very small percentage really make it to the very top. So enjoy it while you can.
Mm-hmm. I told you before, I've been doing a lot of these shows now. This is episode 175, and I asked that at the end of pretty much every single show, and it's amazing. I'm a pretty data-driven guy. I wish that I had them all mapped out and I could check how many people said a very similar statement. Be true to yourself, be genuine. It's probably the most common key takeaway that I get at the end of these shows. So people listening, you don't have to go listen to all 175. Actually, please do that. At least download all of them. Download all of them and give me a 5-star rating. But no, you don't have to listen to all 175 to take away that message. That is very consistent. We're talking about across multiple industries, like riders, racers, influencers, content creators, sponsors. They say that. So it means something. Listen to it. I'm not just making this stuff up. All right. Well, Andy, what is the best way for people listening to connect with you?
The best way would be to connect to FXR. You can go on the website, and if you scroll to the bottom of the website, you'll see a section where you can contact us for racer support. You can click on there. And if you really need to speak to me, you can always call FXR, look at the 1-800 number and give me a call there. And if you want to email me, it would be andyw@fxrracing.com.
Awesome. Don't worry, this show isn't that big. You're not going to get 1,500 million emails, starting that later this week. You may get 1,400 million, but definitely not 1,500 million.
Well, I'll let you know if that happens. I'll have to hire some new people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, that's good stuff, Andy. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight. This has been phenomenal. I love hearing all of your recommendations. I love how you brought your experience into the show too, because that's kind of what I was hoping for. Obviously, I wouldn't have asked you on the show, but that was phenomenal how you wrapped all that together. And I really got to high five Sean Whittycombe for recommending you. And he must be in somewhat good standing with you, because you didn't say, "Oh, Sean, no way." So high five to Sean for that one. But yeah, at this point, I'm gonna leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.
Right on. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4 Wheel Parts. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. Follow us on social media as well. That's where we share a lot of information and upcoming guests for the show. Pay specific attention to our Facebook page. That's where we do our live shows 2 each month. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, you can also check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. That also offers a forum for best practices sharing, so you can ask questions and get answers from the motorsports community. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, 4 Wheel Parts, AMSOIL, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, GSP XTV, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, Diode Dynamics, and High Octane Coffee. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.